Welcome back to AI for Founders. I'm Ryan Estes, and today's guest is Ben Wilcox, CTO and CISO at ProArch, a global digital transformation company that's been on an absolute tear, growing past 500 people and anchoring itself as a Microsoft featured partner. In this conversation, you'll learn how to build a secure foundation before layering on AI, why compliance isn't something to retrofit later, and how startups can avoid the painful mistakes that come with ignoring security and data privacy in the rush to product market fit. We also get into the explosive rise of agentic AI, the challenge of change management, and even pull some surprising leadership lessons from Ben's life as a racing instructor. This episode is for founders, builders, and tech leaders who want to scale quickly without blowing up on compliance, security, or culture. Buckle up. This one's fast, fun, and packed with insights. If you enjoy the podcast, you're going to love the newsletter. Go over to aiforfounders.co and sign up today. This episode is brought to you by Kitcaster, the world's leading podcast booking agency for founders. If you're ready to fuel your content engine, build authority, and close deals through the power of podcast guesting, Kitcaster gets you there. We've booked over 15,000 interviews for more than 800 funded startups and scale-ups, helping founders raise millions, land enterprise deals, and grow their personal brands. Why podcasts? Because nothing beats the trust of long-form communication. When your future customers hear you tell your story in your own voice, the deal flow follows. So if you're a founder and you're ready for conversations that convert, head over to kitcaster.com where founders talk and audience listen. That's Kitcaster by Moburst. Okay, everyone loves to talk about vision, the pitch, the funding round, but you know what gets zero love? The actual product build. That magical, terrifying phase where nothing works, the docs are out of date, and you've asked your dev team, how's it going, for the 47th time today on Slack. That's where Code Story comes in. It's a podcast for startup founders who know that building the thing is the thing. Hosted by Noah Labhart, Code Story goes deep with tech leaders who've been through it, shipping real products, surviving messy launches, and figuring out what actually works and when you're on the edge of chaos. If you're building now or ever plan to, you'll want these stories in your earballs. Search Code Story wherever you get your podcasts or visit codestory.co because founders talk vision, but builders tell code stories. Okay, I've got a confession. As a podcaster and founder, I'm constantly meeting incredible people, guests, listeners, or other entrepreneurs. But here's my little secret. I'm terrible at following up. My inbox is basically a graveyard of missed opportunities. Does that sound like you? You meet someone amazing, exchange emails, have great intentions, and then life happens. 6 months later, you're kicking yourself thinking, I should have stayed in touch with that person. This is exactly why I started using warmstart.ai. And honestly, it's transformed how I think about my network. Instead of letting relationships go cold, Warmstart analyzes my existing contacts and helps me identify who I should be reaching out to and why. It even writes the outreach messages for me. But here's the key. I review everything before it goes out. I'm not just talking about this because they're a sponsor. I'm talking about it because watching a healthcare executive use this to build his entire advisory board in one weekend with 4 CEO signups made me realize I was leaving money on the table every single day. Your network is your net worth, but only if you actually nurture it. Check out warmstart.ai, use code AIFF to get $50 off your first month. Stop letting your relationships turn into missed revenue. All right, we're rolling. Ben, how are you? Thanks for coming on the show.
I'm great, Ryan. How are you doing today?
I'm doing really good. I love that wallpaper.
Thank you.
It
makes me feel very legal as well. Feel about the attorney in me.
I'm a fan of the paisley. You know, it seems like, that fractal kind of psychedelic street art got really popular for a while. And I was always looking at it, I was like, this is just kind of like angular paisley,
There's a calming side of it. I think it's good to have, especially in cybersecurity. There's always a lot of fires going on. So I walk into the room, I feel calm. So.
Nice. Heck yeah, man. Well, I'm so excited to have you here. Why don't you give us a brief overview of ProArch and your roles and responsibility with the organization?
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. So ProArch is a digital transformation company. I'd say we probably focus on like two main areas when it comes to digital transformation: securing the foundation so that an organization can really adopt the technology that would make differences in their business. And then secondly, we look at, once you have that in place, right, now you need data, you need to be able to leverage your AI effectively and efficiently. So layering on top of that kind of secure foundation, you have the ability to implement new solutions, do it in a transformative way, things that can help change how your employees are operating from a process perspective, and how you engage with your customers in a more meaningful way, things that can help you innovate your business quicker. Those are things that we work very closely with our customers on. And once we kind of have that business problem, we go ahead and start solving it.
Amazing. And so kind of like your kind of ideal customer, are they somewhere north of 5 million annual revenue or further along than that?
No, I think it can really start in any sort of spot. It really depends on the business and their needs for technology. Technology-centric organizations are usually kind of a sweet spot for us. So we work with startups all the way through enterprises in that space.
Yeah, I think it's something that's probably ignored a little bit from startups. The enthusiasm to get product market fit in the beginning, like security and data, we'll worry about that down the road. Why are they wrong to think that way?
Oh my gosh. Go read any Reddit SaaS or founders group, and you will find on the first page someone who's built a successful SaaS-based app that they now have to go retrofit compliance into. That is a super hard thing to do. Frankly, I think in today's era, knowing kind of your target base, understanding what their security requirements are, from getting started perspective is important for you as a business owner. So if you're building something, right, know who your customers are, what they have to adhere to, and start baking in some of those things, because they will be asking questions, guaranteed. Doesn't matter if you're
are there like common sneaky compliance things? If I was going into anything medical related, I know I'd have issues there. If I'm looking for SEC compliance and some kind of financial product, you kind of know what to expect there. Are there some sneaky ones that people forget about?
Well, the one of the biggest ones is pretty much anything from a PII perspective, so personally identifiable information. So think of it as, you're a consumer, right? Your consumer information. You get a popular science-based app, and you're operating in these states. Almost every single state has their own individual privacy law, meaning if you have some sort of data leak, security problem, you have to then notify your the consumers of your application, or who is affected by that, as well as potentially notifying the state itself along with that. So basically, bake in privacy controls, and certainly look at it from an overall perspective, right? If they're touching anything credit card related, you got to look at it from a PCI perspective and isolate that, preferably, especially if you're starting off. Go find a third vendor, out there that can handle that for you. Don't try to do it yourself.
Yeah, it's great that there's so many off-the-shelf options for this, because it's like that kind of compliance. Like, why rebuild Stripe when Stripe's sitting right there?
No, and they do it so much better. They don't have to, you don't have to worry about touching the credit card. It's all on a separate site. So nothing ever touches your infrastructure. You just get paid.
Yeah, huge. And I think right now too, there's going to be a major shift because of the rise of the vibe coding apps and the way you can ideate and create so quickly. Like, really what I see as the future of software in some aspect is just bridging third-party applications. I mean, that's basically N8N's whole business model is to create like a nexus of agents that connect third-party tools together. And what I'm seeing now are people that just create a product around that. So they're not using N8N, they're doing something intrinsically. I'm talking about Jiva.ai. I spoke to G yesterday, and very interesting, where he's taking like these work automations, and instead of like sitting down, Zapiering it, N8N it together, it works for 3 days and then something breaks or the API changes and you got to keep fiddling with it. He just takes that whole operation, kind of revenue operation, and puts it under one banner. which I think we'll see a lot more of because, while everyone wants to talk about agentic solutions, boy, building them is still kind of half baked. Some really cool stuff you can do, but it's like, oh man, becomes a bit of a headache. What's your opinion on kind of where we're at agentically right now?
We're definitely in the starting phases of that. I can tell you, right, if you look at just anything that's happened in the last 9 months, frameworks are changing, new frameworks are still being built. They're not even at like version 1 from the agentic perspective. So, the fact that we have so many different choices right now gives certainly developers a lot of choices of what they should be doing in there. I think you got to be at a spot where you're kind of evaluating where you are at this point and move forward quickly with what your available options are. Because if you wait, I mean, if you started having a product planning session today, right, come around in January, you'd have new choices to be made and having to figure out what you need to do. So we often encourage when talking to customers or developers, right, let's take your plan for now and start moving, because otherwise we'll just be revisiting this literally every 2 months and trying to rescope it to fit what's changed in the environment and the ecosphere.
Yeah, this Jiva product, he launched in January, and as of now, he's got a $6 million annual run rate.
Nice.
So it's like, boy, the desire for this kind of stuff is humongous. I talked to another guy, absolutely brilliant, Alexander. He's got a company called Smith OS, and it's an agent building software. It builds agents, and he was talking about agent swarms, where sooner and later, it's not that you're building agents, rather you're deploying groups of agents that all work together.
Mm-hmm.
And his vision of the future is really kind of philosophical in like how we're going to start designing systems and how profitable will be. Where I'm kind of like seeing where the puck's going is like, okay, if you have this hot product that goes, 0 to 6 million in 6-7 months, what's to stop, any other company, really you have kind of the speed to which you can deploy before like all the other competitors enter the space. So with the clients that you're seeing, how are they thinking about like the speed of pace right now with AI?
It's daunting, frankly, for a lot of them. We have a lot of conversations in the prospect side of things, and not nearly as much movement on when it comes to doing things. And part of it, I think, is that, some of the returns that have been promised haven't been completely realized, where if an organization really goes through the process of understanding what they're trying to solve, figuring out, how much accuracy is acceptable, what can I get from this, agentic approach or just any AI side of it, right, from a generative perspective, and this is acceptable. They can see returns. I think that sometimes what people are looking for is really like that professional side of it. And I don't know if we're quite at that stage yet. There's still a lot of tuning. It requires a lot of effort to get to high accuracy. And, I'm sure we'll get there, just not quite yet.
Yeah, it's interesting. We started with accepting such a high tolerance for error.
Yeah.
It's like, wow, this is like really, really wrong. And it's just so confident about it. And people go, oh, hey, that's just, the LLM slipping up. And I guess everyone's just like, okay, I suppose compliance isn't quite as forgiving.
No, it's not. And like in the compliance side, especially, right, we start thinking about the agentic side, and there are some concerns on there, right? How do you almost have to treat this agentic agent as its own user or identity, right? And its actions are going to be represented by your business. So anything it does, right, needs to be audited, logged, especially if it's potentially touching any sort of sensitive information out there.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's, the innate fear, I think, with the whole agentic movement is that it's going to reduce headcount. And people are worried about is their job safe? Is their job not safe? I've heard it described a couple of ways. One being either you're as close as you possibly can get to AI or you're as far away as possible from it. And that's basically how it keeps you safe. So when you're thinking about ProArch and your team, you guys have what, about 400 people on staff?
Yeah, around 400 or 500, somewhere in that range.
400 or 500. And then how many direct reports do you have?
Oh, I'm only, I have 6 right now. So
6. Okay. So when you're thinking about it, and how do you ease their fears? If they're coming to you, they're saying, Ben, I'm a little bit concerned that, AI is going to take my job. How do you ease their fears, or what kind of tasks or skills are going to be necessary for people in the workforce today?
So I'm a big proponent of everyone using AI as a personal assistant to begin with. I mean, that's your starting point, right? And you really have to push that change throughout your entire organization, because without that, those fears are going to stick around. People need to see how it can add value, how it can make a difference in their productivity, being able to do something for them that maybe it was a time-consuming thing. I'll give you an example. I work a lot on the Microsoft partnership side of ProArch. And one of the most complex things I have to do is try to disseminate what Microsoft is changing this in their new fiscal year, which just started, and all of their go-to-market to all of our organization. And we cover, I'll say, 90% of what Microsoft sells as a business. So we build solutions on top of that. Now, trying to disseminate all that information and have repeated meetings over and over again around what it is important to Microsoft, how ProArch aligns, can be very, very time consuming. I mean, it's like the first 3 months of that new fiscal year for me. So I've built a series of different agents that can talk to our internal teams around what they should be doing in the marketplace. What should they be looking at from a solution perspective? How do, if we're looking at a certain type of activity, right? And AI is very much security, it's very much data, it's very much application development, right? How do we get all these teams to kind of work together and solve a specific problem, right? It's not just individual teams. Really, you're creating a solution out of all of your groups. So I use it to help speed up that, let people ask questions to it, ideate around their role, their responsibilities. There have been a lot of parameters around that, and it saved me a ton of time so far.
Yeah.
Still having meetings, but I'm having probably at least half of the meetings that I would previously.
What tools are you using daily, kind of like in your AI tech stack?
Okay, for me personally, I use Copilot for business productivity stuff. So right within Office. So Outlook's a big part of it. Teams, can't live without my AI note taker in there. I mean, that's fundamental. It helps keep everything on track and helps facilitate the conversation. Outside of that, I really do like ChatGPT. Use the professional version of that. Also like Claude. I think Claude does a really great job when it comes to working with policy procedures, like refining of material. I've been able to build some really great projects around that stack. So those are probably the primary ones I'm using. I have played around with lots of different ones out there, but those are the ones I keep going back to.
Yeah. What about Gemini? Are you playing around with that at all?
I did, but I really didn't have too much success after using it for the 10 or 14-day trial. I just was like, it wasn't keeping up. I wasn't liking the output quite as much. I felt like I was having to do a lot more refinement to it than some of the other ones. Everything changes though. I mean, at one point, you feel kind of like what's happened to my tools, right? All of a sudden, one day it just like stops working right the way it was, and they're adjusting stuff, and usually it comes right back. But I could never feel like I got to where Gemini was making sense for what I use it for.
Yeah, and I feel like it's fully integrated now. I go to GPT just like first response, and it took me a minute. It came out in November 22, something like that.
Yep.
And I remember the big thing was you could create like a JavaScript Twitter bot with a couple of prompts. Like the first real interest I had was like how you could code with it with GPT early on. Now, I mean, just the vibe coding thing is out of control. But like using it just to check down for copy, using it to aggregate information. Notebook LM, I love that for creating digestible content. There's so many different ways, and it really reminds me of like when the iPhone came out. And I kind of had like a sea change where I was like, okay, I now am going to see if there is an app for everything, just to find out kind of what was out there.
Sure.
And so like sitting down and being like, okay, well, I want to know what kind of plant that is and go find the app and then download it. And okay, cool. What are the capacities? And we're at a similar junction right now when it's like, if I'm thinking outside of AI, I feel like I'm wasting my time. It's almost like a discipline to say, okay, take this process, take this workflow, take this idea, take this question, bring it to GPT, and then ask it to like ask me questions to kind of make it a better prompt. Which is to say that like I'm almost convinced that it's smarter than me. Where for a long time I was like, no, I got the ideas, but now I'm like, make my ideas better.
Yeah, and it does enhance it. I feel the same way. Like it's with some of the memory knowledge in there, right? It's starting to really be able to personalize the output to me, and it does kind of feel like you're talking to yourself sometimes on there.
So ProArch over the last couple of years has had absolutely explosive growth. Like if you look kind of year over year, I was checking it out over like the last 4 or 5 years. And it's a 20-year company, right? So like what do you attribute to that explosive growth?
Well, I think it's that we are willing to explore. I do believe that we're very good at solutions and being able to kind of package things, right? So if we look at helping a business, right? People don't want to spend a whole lot of time planning, right? We don't, and we live in an era today where we're planning for 6 months for a data platform just doesn't make sense. Right. So you got to have accelerators out there. You got to be able to do things that are much quicker. And, you build these solution accelerators or platforms to solve 70% of the build time, right? Then you can focus the rest of the time on the actual business problem. And I think that we do those things too really, really well. We got some really exceptionally smart people here that have been here for a long time. And I think that, when you're able to marry security and data and AI together, you have a really strong story, and it's going to keep bringing people back, right? So we can really help an organization from starting off to when they're very mature and we're on their 20th iteration of their product. Like that's stuff that we do. So.
Yeah. Well, and you guys are closely married to the Microsoft ecosystem, and that's been really successful to you. And Microsoft, I suppose, famously has just hit it out of the park with AI right out of the jump.
Yeah.
It's just, obviously they have that partnership with GPT or with OpenAI, but Copilot is a total smash hit. It'll be very difficult to kind of dethrone that position for a lot of engineers and programmers. Do you think part of ProArch's success is largely tied to kind of Microsoft doing so well with LLMs?
Yes, and security. I think both of those things are super important because you really can't do AI without that secure foundation. To trust the data sources, right? If you have bad data, who's going to trust your AI on that front? So I think the combination of you can get work with one vendor that can bring all of those things together and do it much more effectively, much more efficiently, and at a reduced cost is certainly an enabler. And I think us hitching our sides to Microsoft dozens of years ago has certainly helped.
Yeah. I'm curious because of your experience in the industry and also just the great breadth of customers you've got, where you see kind of UI going for AI, which is to say right now we're in a spot where there's like a little sparkly button, it's like, ooh, try the AI feature. And it puts like a glowing rectangle around whatever you're doing. And now it's AI. I have this kind of core belief right now that that's going to change. And that ultimately what I want out of UI is one button to solve my problems. I don't want to have to type anything. That's annoying. And I want the AI just to kind of work like magic. It doesn't need to announce it to the world. You know what I mean? It just give me what I want. So when you're seeing successful products being developed right now with AI, am I way off base here? Or maybe a better question is like, how are people doing it well?
Simplicity, certainly. I think that is key. Less verbosity, too much, right? Too much text, right? Keep it simple. Nobody, it's hard to read long emails. Why would I want to read a long prompt response, right? Keep it brief. So let's keep that going. So I think you're spot on there, Ryan. Success is there. And frankly, it comes to accuracy, and being able to do that sustainably over time is challenging, because if you think about it from like a quality engineering perspective, right? It used to be that you write an application, you send it off for quality testing, or maybe, your full stack development where team was doing that if, you're running really lean and mean, right? And you're coming out and, now you can ship it. Well, now you got this backend program that's constantly shifting its versions, right? And the parameters of what the LLM was really good at 6 months ago has just changed. And, is it still solving the business problems the exact same ways that you wanted it to previously solve it? Those things are real problems, right? And that's what the case is. So now you have to actually think about the quality of the back end constantly and measuring those successes as well. So making sure that your business outcome's still valid, even though the back end's changed.
Yeah. And I'm thinking the way that I, am engaging with these tools, and I say that typing is annoying, but I still prefer it. Like, I think, GPT like blew up because it's so simple and you just chat with it. But now there's opportunities that you can upload pictures, and use that as kind of like a data input, or you can turn your microphone on, which then speech to text, and then you submit the text, or you could just have a conversation with it and it'll just straight up talk to you. Like, how are you using it? Are you still doing mostly chat? Like typing?
Yeah, I'm mostly a type person. I think it's because I'm in so many meetings during the day and I talk a lot, and I just don't want to talk anymore. So, yeah. I was really impressed. I remember when they first launched that feature in Chat GPT of communicating. I had a nice long conversation with it one night, and then my wife's like, "Stop talking that thing," and stop talking. At that point, I decided to put it up and have more conversations.
Yeah. It is off-putting though, right? A little bit. There's something about it. I mean, if I'm feeling up to it, if I have a long drive or something, I like to just have conversations. So I'll be like, tell me the story of the Cheyenne that lived in Confluence Park area of Denver, Colorado, through the lens of prospector that's getting ready to go mining for gold.
Yeah.
And you can, it'll have this like great story. But when you did that one specifically, the lady was like, "Oh, that's cool. Yeah, let me tell you a story." And I was like, stop. Hey, bring the sass down. Like, give this to me like Malcolm Gladwell or something. Like, I don't want to have like attitude when you're
Well, I haven't personally used it for telling stories to me, but I think that's a good use. Like, my kids do use it for that.
Yeah.
So they like to have stories about whatever they want to hear about in the morning. And we have the whatever the preview feature is that they have on Alexa that has better AI assistance, and it tells a great story. It talks about Marty McFly or whatever my 5-year-old wants to hear. So.
Yeah. And my kids do the same. They've always used speech to text, so they don't have a little bit. I think there's like a privacy thing that I'm worried about. Also, to your point, I do a lot of talking, so I like kind of like the solitude and the quiet. But also, my prompts are so weird. Like, you don't want someone overhearing you asking and talking about the Cheyenne and some prospector. You know what I mean? I'm kind of like embarrassed. So like the prompts will be like all down here,
True. Right. Yep. Absolutely. I think that we'll probably end up in a state where it's hybrid, and when memory even gets even more better, right? It's going to be able to pick back up on it. And right now it feels like I'm having all these kind of separate chats, and you sometimes get a different person on the other side, right? Depending on what your chat is. So when it feels more consistent, maybe you'll end up having more trust with that persona that's on the other side. So,
yeah. Yeah, it's like the voice of Siri changed on my phone for some reason, and I just got so less patient with Siri. I was like, "Who's this new Siri?" She seems
more
worse than the
pushy
last
at
one.
me.
Amazing. You know, somebody told me once when they're doing diligence on a company, like the tenure and longevity of the management of the company is something that they look really heavily at. Now, you guys over at ProArch have a lot of veterans that have been with the company for a long time. What is it about ProArch, the culture or the work itself, that seems to keep you guys around for so long?
Well, I can really kind of speak to myself and on that, but I've been with the company 18 years, and what I really like is the fact that I have opportunity. Right, I'm a shiny object type person. Right, as soon as something comes out, I want to play with it. I want to go deep into it. It doesn't mean I want to stay there. And so I've always had the opportunity at ProArch to kind of evolve myself, work on new technology, go deep, get really good at it, but then be able to hand it off to others. And I like that kind of opportunity to try new things. Now, it may turn out that, hey, I don't really like doing this, right? But at least I gave it a shot. And that's what I always tell everyone who joins ProArch is, right, if you love learning, you'll be at ProArch a long time because we are constantly learning something new. It takes a lot to stay up in the Microsoft relationship, certifications, right? Our team members are constantly having to do new things. We do like to stay at the forefront, right? So that's important for us. And I think that's allowed us to have a lot of successes in that space. And by having leadership that embraces those same things, that change is good, change can help, right? It's allowed us to grow and continue with success.
In addition to kind of managing a team, you're also very hands-on personally.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. Cool.
I've had 12 different roles. I've had 150 people underneath me. I've had roles where I've had one person underneath me. It's I've been an individual contributor in numerous different instances. ProArch's where I got my start in cybersecurity, and got my start in working with regulated industries. Up to that point, I had been working in building applications, or I worked in public education, or I was an entrepreneur myself. So those are all things that I learned from, but then I realized, hey, I really like change, or like doing new things, and I found a home for doing that.
Cool. And then, do you guys have a big HQ? Or are you dispersed?
We're remote work. We do have offices, but I'm in a remote location, and most of our employees are as well.
Cool. All right. I want to do something new and special here. So I've got these cards. I think I got these like 4 or 5 years ago, and I was going through a box. I was like, oh yeah, those things. And what they are is they're biases and logical fallacies. So what I'm looking for here is some honesty, Ben. Okay. This episode is brought to you by MoBurst, the AI-first growth engine trusted by iconic startups like Calm, Robinhood, Reddit, Uber, and Google. MoBurst is a digital full-service mobile-first marketing agency that helps companies to scale and become category leaders. Whether you're finding product market fit or ready to accelerate growth, MoBurst delivers creative, data-driven solutions that help with scale and efficiency and impact. At MoBurst, we're not just guessing what works, we're predicting it. As an AI-first agency, MoBurst uses cutting-edge tools to analyze user behavior, adapt creative in real time, and uncover hidden growth opportunities. The result, marketing that's faster, smarter, and built to convert. From early-stage startups to global brands, we've helped hundreds of companies overcome complex challenges, unlock new audiences, and optimize every metric that matters. At MoBurst, we believe that creative thinking, advanced technology, and data are the core drivers of success at scale. If you're serious about scaling your business with precision and purpose, it's time to talk to MoBurst. Visit moburst.com and let's build something category-defining together.
All right.
I want you to do some self-reflection from your direct reports, how they would answer this about you. Okay.
Okay.
So the first one we have is in-group bias. This is you unfairly favor those who belong to your group. What's the group?
Oh, car enthusiasts.
You an F1 guy?
I like F1. Yeah. I honestly don't watch as much as I really want to, but yeah, I do like watching F1. I watch the recaps.
Yeah, it's cool. They're opening this like F1 cafe or something like that in Denver. And it's basically like a really like beautiful hip bar, and then it has like, I think like a dozen F1 simulators. So you can go there and like race your friends, you know?
Awesome.
And yeah, it seems really fun, but I think it seems like a really smart way to market to F1. Like F1 seems like it's growing like very quickly. I was like, this is like a really smart idea to get people into it, particularly women, you know?
Yeah, I mean, a bunch of handsome guys driving around cars really fast. I think it's all right. They'll get bases everywhere, right?
Yeah, 100%. So you're a car guy. What's your favorite car? I mean, kind of.
My personal favorite is probably the car that I drive on. I teach people to drive on racetracks. So I do high performance driver education instruction, and I personally drive a BMW 330.
Nice. You're a racing instructor.
Yes, I am.
That's amazing. Where did that come from? Were you like a hot rod guy in high school or something?
I always loved cars. Cars were kind of a passion, a hobby. I got introduced through buying a car. I bought a car from an instructor back in the year 2000. And I never took it for a number of years. And then I had a mechanical problem. I brought it to the guy to fix it. And turns out he was the head of the Northeast Audi Quattro Club. And he invited me down and I joined, and then I got addicted. I had to have it. Yep.
Seems dangerous. And by dangerous, I mean expensive.
Yes.
You ever wrecked a car?
I have. I've kissed a wall before. So
amazing. Okay, I'm going to try and find a logical fallacy.
Right.
Man, that was too complicated for me. Okay, making what could be called an appeal to purity as a way to dismiss relevant criticisms or flaws in an argument. It's quite a mouthful.
Oh, wow.
This is called No True Scotsman, making what could be called an appeal to purity.
I'm not even sure I follow that. What's the question?
Either. I have to go back to logical fallacies. It was too complicated. I might read it again and be like, oh my gosh, I do this. Oh no. Okay, how about this? The backfire effect. When your core beliefs are challenged, it can cause you to believe them more strongly.
I don't think I abide by that.
Yeah. If someone like offended your car, or it was like, your car, whatever.
Up, down. You know what? For me, it's best idea in a room wins. If you can prove it otherwise, go for it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's very scientific of you.
Well, I've spent a lot of time in some great debates with some very smart people. And, you're never the smartest person in the room. There's always someone who can add some context in there. And, frankly, that's a great use for AI, right? Balance out my thoughts, right? Because I can go one direction too far, right? And you personally might know what that is, and I can help you kind of get a different view on things.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Like, I've got a guy, good buddy of mine, known him for 20 years, and I feel like we're very aligned politically. I'm not a very political guy. I just don't. I like business and sports, hunting and stuff, but. If there's an issue that comes up, particularly locally here in Denver or something, I'll call him up and be like, hey, how do we feel about this? Yeah. And he'll let me know how we feel. I'm like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Yep.
Now you can either decide if you want to join the board meeting or get out on the street and pick it or whatever you got to do, right?
Yeah. These kind of habits though, usually come from having good outcomes. It's like, okay, you trust a guy or you trust in a process. And so like, then you can kind of default to the best idea. How would you kind of like, How would you kind of protect that? Because it is like these biases are interesting because they're kind of baked into us, and you see that politically a lot. If someone like comes after your guy, suddenly you're so pro your guy and you hate them and this kind of thing. It's never been a big thing for me, but like, how do you kind of stay true? Or better question would be like, someone has a better idea than you. Like, how do you concede the point graciously?
Um, and I think that can be challenging, especially if you feel like you're really invested in it or you spend a lot of time in that, in whatever the topic is. But at the end of the day, especially, I think it's easier in business. Personally, I think it's hard sometimes, but in business, right, you're there to solve the problem or come up with a solution that is in the best interest of the customer. And so therefore, it really can't be a personal thing, right? It's about team building and trust. So when I would run teams, right, it's about building that trust between them, right? People, confrontation's fine. Like, it's a good skill to have and be able to confront someone. When you feel, emotion, right, you should take some sort of action based off of that emotion. But whether it's tempering it down because you feel too angry or saying that you want to go do something else. So, certainly trust is big, right? If you can feel like you can trust your team to be behind you regardless on that, that's where I would start, and making sure that you have a team that can feel that way and confident that, hey, everyone has a bad idea once in a while, right? It's not uncommon. It's okay to be wrong.
I'd be interested in your kind of leadership style too, because the folks that always kind of inspired me from a leadership perspective have kind of a yes and energy. So you're trying to gather, multiple opinions about what, best next steps are. And if there's conflicting ideas, it doesn't need to be adversarial. It's like yes and this is an experiment which we're going to go, put an epic around so that we have ways to demonstrate if it was successful or not, but try not to marry that to the person whose idea it was. You know what I mean? Like, so even like a unsuccessful experiment is still a success.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
I'll give you the racing analogy to that, right? If you're going around a racetrack, there's lots of different lines to go. Some lines are going to be better than others. And until you have vast experience on that single racetrack, you might ride with someone. And I've ridden with students. We go around a certain section and I might have 10 times the amount of seat time that they have. But you know what? They're doing something different that improves an exit speed or something there that I would be to take it back myself and use it, right? So I think, there's something to be learning from everyone, and you just got to constantly refine and reiterate, and till to the point where it doesn't make any more financial sense, or you're at your deadline and want to get it done.
Nice. I love the analogy. Do you find there's like a fluency in with cars or anything else you're really into? And I'll say it like this, like another lifetime ago, I was a touring and recording musician. And really the way I interpreted the world was like in melody and rhythm. And I like, that was the language, the fluency I had. And then I got really into jujitsu, and like, so I started seeing the world as like grappling and like, okay, position and submission or retreat. Like you could start to kind of use it as like analogous. Do you find the same thing with cars or anything else?
Definitely with cars. I mean, like eyes up, right? Eyes up is a very common thing, because when someone first starts driving a race car, they have a tendency to kind of look in front of them, or they're checking their dashboard or whatever it is, right? They want to see how fast they're going. Eyes up, because you can't make a decision about what you're going to do next unless you're peering around that corner on there. So, I would say that we'll have a whole lot of time for other hobbies out there, but I think that there is some good balance with that. And certainly
right now, if we're looking broadly in business, what's eyes up? What do you need to be looking at?
Definitely on AI, definitely on security, and keep a close eye on your data at this point.
Yeah. Amazing. Okay. We're entering the lightning round. Are you ready, Ben?
I'm ready. Let's go.
All right. Let's say you're entering college as a freshman right now, knowing what you know about the future. What do you study?
Data science.
Still.
I think that there's foundational areas there. Once you kind of understand that data of where it can go, because you still have to bring all this stuff together. We live in a world of information, and like there, you have to be able to tie these things together. You need some core skills to be able to extract that data and put it into different systems. And then certainly, I mean, I'd say you even need to be learning outside of some of those things and building some personal skills as well. Those are key parts. So, and have a job that lets you talk. That's
be in a fraternity while you're going to school.
Absolutely.
Yeah, my daughter, she's a freshman in college, and she was just telling me she joined a sorority a week ago, and she's like, "Dad, I have 40 hours I have to commit to this float we're building." I was like, well, welcome to the club.
I was thinking about along the lines of like a sales job. Sales jobs require a lot of patience, a lot of rejection. It'll teach you to be a strong entrepreneur or business team member.
Totally agree. If we're talking about groups that I prefer, people that come from retail and food service backgrounds, aisle with a smile, you know.
That is a tough skill.
That's a tough skill for sure. The audience of this podcast here love business ideas. So if your only mission was to earn $1 million, what business would you start?
Oh, $1 million. I would say my interest would be on helping an organization. I do think that there's a lot of stuff with AI, but I also think that people are fundamentally getting the early stages of change management that is required in a business to adopt AI. They're doing it wrong, and they're not doing it well, and they don't have that change management side of it. So I'd build a practice on helping organizations do better change management.
Ooh, I love that. Now, everybody wants to be an AI consultant and build agentic things and build, but nobody's talked about like the change management component of like, okay, all the AI stuff is great, but what about the people left to run it?
People still need to run it, right? Going back to what you said earlier, right? AI is not going to take your job. It's going to augment it, in my opinion. It's going to take those mundane tasks, but you have to figure out what it is, or someone has to help you get to the point of being able to figure out what it is. So I think change management's a big missing piece of where we are at.
I totally agree. It's I adapt and do things, pivot on a dime all the time, dramatic ways, but I'm probably kind of a weirdo. I think most people like it's scary and change is really hard, and they don't like it. My mother-in-law worked in change management for a long time, and I would just hear these horror stories because you start to think, particularly, I think if you're fluent with the tools, you're comfortable with like digging in, you like to get your hands dirty, you want to tinker around a bit and find the parameters. But if you're not, people get freaked out, and it really does take kind of a steady hand to help people get to the point, because what's the point of, having agentic support for your team if they don't use it?
Right. And I think another big piece of change management is people, and whether or not they are choosing to willfully ignore the communication or the news, right? But we're all just inundated with so much information. How do you pick out what's relevant? And right, change is communicated, but you got to find the right mechanisms to communicate with your entire team base here. When you're talking for a larger business, that's hard to get that. But once you can figure that out and you could get some adoption going, that's where I think some real big game changers can be.
If you could live in any historical era, except for now or the future, what would it be?
Ooh. I think it would be really interesting to be in early America on some of the frontier stuff. I can't really kind of imagine what it would be like thinking of like, Boston in the early 1700s or late 1600s. I imagine it was probably pretty wild and scary, or even fun to check it out.
So cool. It's always seemed like kind of smelly to me, like think about it, you know.
Oh, I'm sure it was. But less smelly than like a place like London during the same time, right? If you're
Oh, yeah, I know. It
cities,
just in my mind's eye, it's gray and dark and smelly.
right?
Amazing. I got a couple more here. Let's go back to the bias one. Here's one. Here's a good one.
Okay.
So the placebo effect. If you believe you're taking medicine, it can sometimes work, even if you know it's fake. What's your placebo? Driving fast?
From my wife, definitely will get me to do anything. So
Yes. Nice. This has been awesome. Hey, what do you think of electric cars, being a car guy?
I think that they have a place. I think that personally, from a racetrack perspective, not quite there yet. I'm not completely bought in. But I do think that they have a lot of great technology out there. I think that it's good to have a mix of stuff out there. I'm interested to see kind of where they're going with more hybrid technology. I think that's going to be a big push for a little bit. Once they figure out a better battery system that gets it really much farther, I think that we'll maybe revisit electric cars in 10 years and may have a completely different opinion on that.
Yeah, I think ultimately I kind of consider myself an aspiring car guy, but I'd like a 72 like Chevy pickup. I've had my eye on some of those.
Yep.
But I just can't really justify it. So I'm really hoping that next couple of years, we have Waymo subscriptions that are $30 a month and I can drive wherever I need to go. So then my vehicle would be like something I love and cherish, I think that could be really cool for kind of class or automotive enthusiasts in general, is that like just the basic daily transport is just kind of taken out of your hands, or maybe it's a revenue opportunity. You can have 6 cars just driving people around out there, but maybe I'm just trying to rationalize buying a classic car.
Well, everyone's heading to bring a trailer right now, I think, to go find that car of their dreams. But no, I like that idea. I think, Waymo's, I loved it, right? San Francisco, I'm heading back there in November. Can't wait to Waymo around the city again, like I did this past spring. I think it was a great experience. I'm happy never ever be in another Uber again. Like I'm okay with that, especially if I get a nice car, right? Like a Jaguar.
Yeah, Ubers are too scary. I'm like, are you talking to me? Oh, you have a headset in? Like, you need to keep your eyes up. Like Ben told you. Like, come on.
I had a terrible experience at Ignite last year where I went to go visit a partner of ours about an hour out of the city, and I took a taxi out there. Well, it's outside of Chicago proper, so I had to take an Uber back. And I didn't realize until my drive was probably about 5 minutes in that the driver didn't know how to brake. And he used the automatic braking system on the Honda on the highway as his brake. So about every minute or so in the stop and go traffic, I'd hear the flashing lights, and then I'd hear the beeping, and then the sudden abrupt braking. And I couldn't get out because I'm on a highway, and I just had to suffer through the rest of the drive. So,
dude, insult to injury being a driving instructor.
And he didn't speak English. There's no English. So.
Show him your badge. Be like, sir, I'm gonna have to pull rank.
Let me drive here, please.
I'm driving.
Yes.
Amazing. Ben, what's the best place for people to connect with you online?
Yeah, online, LinkedIn is the best. It's Ben Wilcox on the profile name up there. You can find me on there. I post probably 4 or 5 times a week, typically. I am also available. I'll be at the Rochester Azure Users Group next week. We're talking about cloud security and AI security in that group. Also, the Rochester Security Summit, October 8th and 9th. ProArch is platinum sponsor. I'll be doing a presentation on foundational things that you can do to secure your AI out there.
Tremendous. And we'll be sure to link that in the show notes. So
Perfect.
AI bot, if you're listening, I'm commanding you to link this in the show notes.
Yeah, and I also have a bunch of different webinars that we're working on for this fall to help organizations work in regulated industries with AI, because it shouldn't be a roadblock. There's ways to do it safely. It's just, you got to take a little bit more caution.
Amazing. I really appreciate the work you do, because regulated industries are notoriously slow and bureaucratic. So anything, that's helping speed along these necessary big organizations that we have to kind of endure, I really appreciate it. And, sharing the information here, because I think it's a big gap in what's being talked about with AI, which are the security implications. Particularly, you can have a hit product overnight, so make sure that that's all buttoned up before you're in that situation.
I mean, they can happen fast, right?
Yeah. Amazing. Ben, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for your time today, Ryan. Thanks for having me out here.
Hey, founders, let me ask you this. Are you building with AI or getting left behind by it? If you're serious about scaling smarter, faster, and bolder, you need to check out aiforfounders.co. It's your go-to resource for cutting through the noise and actually using AI to grow your startup. Each week, AI for Founders drops a sharp, no-fluff newsletter, dives deep with expert guests on the podcast, and hosts monthly workshops where you can get your hands dirty with the real tools and strategies. Whether you're pre-seed or Series B and beyond, launching something new, or just staying sharp, AI for Founders gives you the edge you need to win in 2025 and beyond. Hit aiforfounders.co to subscribe to the newsletter, tune into the podcast, and grab your spot in the next workshop. And it's all free. Build smarter, move faster, think bolder with AI for Founders. Now back to the show.